Hello bourbon and whiskey fans, I'm Tim the Suburban Dad, and today I want to cover the topic of Tennessee whiskey. I see the question asked a lot, is Tennessee whiskey bourbon? Well, the answer simply is no, but why is it different from bourbon? That part is a little bit less straightforward. As I'm talking with you guys here, I'm going to have a little taste of each of these. This is a Tennessee whiskey, so Jack Daniel's bonded. Over here I have a Kentucky bourbon, Jim Beam bonded, which, by the way, continued bottle. The only way you can find it now is dusty on the shelf somewhere. It's disappointing because it's a pretty good bottle. I went with bonded versions of these guys just to kind of keep a level playing field. So let's go ahead and pour these and I'll sip and talk at the same time. So, qualifications for bourbon, as you probably well know by now, or maybe you're new and you don't know, that's all right. Either way, bourbon has to be at least 51% corn in the mash bill. It has to be created here in the US. It cannot be distilled higher than 160 proof before it's aged, and it can't enter the barrel at higher than 125 proof. Once it's in the bottle, it has to be at least 80 proof, okay, to be considered bourbon. So this is Jim Beam bonded from Kentucky. Bourbon, fun fact, does not have to be made in Kentucky, contrary to popular belief, just has to be made here in the US. You could have Colorado bourbon, Texas bourbon, Indiana. All these different states are making bourbon now. Jim Beam bonded. It's definitely got that peanutty quality to it. Tennessee whiskey, on the other hand, has to have all those qualifications. The proof points and the mash bill, they both have to be aged in a new charred oak barrel. Now, what's interesting about Tennessee, this whiskey can only be distilled and created in Tennessee, and it has to follow the Lincoln County process, which involves filtering the distillate over maple charcoal or steeping it in the maple charcoal before it enters the barrel for aging. Between the two of these, this one is softer and more velvety on the mouthfeel. Both are pretty sweet. I'd say this one's a little sweeter. The Jim Beam, it's still sweet, but it has more spice and a little bit more oak to it. Between the two, I honestly like the Jack Daniel's better in this case. Here's what's interesting. Tennessee has had a lot more ups and downs with prohibition than the whole US, right? The federal prohibition, so the entire country, lasted from 1920 until 1933. Prohibition in Tennessee started in 1910, so it started 10 years earlier, and it didn't end until 1939, 6 years after the federal ban was lifted. Aside from that, this Lincoln County process was only made official in 2013 when the governor signed it into law that it was part of qualification of being a Tennessee whiskey. So some of the big names you know in Tennessee that are producing Tennessee whiskey are Jack Daniel's and George Dickel. We also got this company right here, Old Dominick. That's another great Tennessee whiskey. Nowadays there's a lot more craft distilleries as well. I honestly have not dived into Tennessee whiskey a whole lot. What's interesting is there's one company that has an exception written into law. They do not have to use the Lincoln County process, which is Benjamin Pritchard. Again, don't know why they're special. They've got some interesting bourbon. I haven't tried any of their stuff, I should say whiskey. I haven't tried any of their stuff. They have a chocolate bourbon, which they actually add chocolate in the finishing part of the bourbon. I don't know how that's allowed. It's still to be called a bourbon, but they also make a Tennessee whiskey. They're working on rye and single malt and all this other stuff. So I've not checked out any of their stuff. The idea of adding chocolate to my bourbon does not appeal to me, but it certainly is different. I'll say that. I tried to do some digging. I'm going to keep digging because it's just interesting to me. So far, I have not found out why Tennessee has its own whiskey designation. Why isn't there Georgia whiskey and West Virginia whiskey? You know, why is there Tennessee whiskey and then there's bourbon? I know that Tennessee produced a lot of whiskey, even way back Civil War era, but I have not stumbled upon why exactly they have their own designation just yet. That could really turn into a whole mess if each state says, well, in my state you have to run it over a rhubarb stalk before it goes in the barrel, and that's Iowa whiskey. For real, why does there have to be a Tennessee whiskey? I don't know. Good for you, Tennessee. Happy for you, but is it really necessary? I don't know. I don't think there needs to be a Missouri whiskey. So there you have it. Hopefully that helps clear up the issue of why is Tennessee whiskey not bourbon? Why is it different? What's your favorite Tennessee whiskey so far? Let me know in the comments. Until next time, cheers!